Could you imagine we had just filmed a whole thing and I hadn't actually pressed that right?
Hi! I had done a few times at the wedding. I thought I had taken a video, and then I'm like,
Oh no!
because if it's noisy, you can't hear the
Yes.
right. So I just assumed it, and I'm like,
Oh my gosh.
doing that. That is
And everybody's like giving it their
oh,
best.
yeah. So many times I was like, it's not a photo, it's a video. There was nothing.
It's nothing.
Nothing was recorded, and I was just like, oh, I can't ask people to reenact that.
Yeah, you just have to be like,
Cutting the cake.
it worked.
And they were like, send me it.
Oh no!
Send me it. And I'm like,
yeah,
well, I'll send you. I'll put it in a reel, and it just doesn't exist. So that's.
Is that better?
Well, yeah, we can see more.
Good, because I felt it would. Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode of.
I know it's very matchy.
Matchy, matchy,
Very
innit?
matchy. I'm
Well,
gonna get a cushion now.
Get a cushion because I want to lean on it.
That's a good idea. That's comfortable.
Exactly. But then also I'm a cross-legger. So what we were, what are we talking about
I've
today?
done my coffee.
What's happening with you today, just now, in life?
Just
What's on our minds?
busy, but trying to. I think the 21 Days to Glow challenge always makes me realise you need to just slow down.
Yeah.
You need some sort of consistency, and it always makes me think about that I don't drink enough water, or do you know what's been really bothering me for weeks and weeks and weeks is, and I know it's a thing, is a twitchy eyelid.
Oh, so many people talk
I've
about
got
that
it right
twitchy
now.
eyelid, don't they? And about how it's like, it's your nervous system telling you to stop being an asshole.
I've got it right now.
Oh my gosh. It's just
And it's
like,
probably just so much caffeine, because I do live and run on
I
caffeine,
need
right?
to not
But
finish this coffee.
do it.
Don't,
Do
don't,
it.
no.
Party
Like I can feel my brain getting squeezed.
Yeah, I get a wee funny feeling above my left eyebrow, and I know that I've drank
It's
too
true,
much
it's
caffeine.
happening.
However, just replacing one of those coffees with a wee glass of water. So it makes me think about what I'm doing and what I'm not doing when the challenge comes around.
Yeah, it's that reset button, isn't it?
Mhm.
So for me, do you know, I've got this thing. Don't come for me. Wait till I've said the end, right?
Withhold
So,
judgment.
I'm not, you need to let me get to the end. Don't take this out of context. Good job, you're the ones cutting this up and putting it out. And so nobody's good. So, I've lost a bit of weight recently,
Mhm.
right? And for me, I've got this thing where for the longest time I was like, in order to lose the weight, it's going to take me so much effort, therefore I can't be arsed, right?
Mm-hmm.
For me, I've now got to the point where I'm like, I can acknowledge it's easier for me to have lost the weight than it is to deal with the mental burden of all the crap that came along with thinking about working around it. Does that make sense? Like, for me now, I'm like, actually, now that I kind of know what to do, and now that I've got a bit of a handle on this, it's easier for me to just watch what I eat and work out than it is to deal with the constant thought about what am I going to wear, and what is that going to look like, and is this going to be uncomfortable, and oh my god, I feel so sluggish. So for me, when I started it, and actually we have no idea what we've talked about in any of these things, but I don't know whether I talked about this last time, but I was cutting carbs. I don't know whether I did, right? So I discovered that I was napping every day. I was so exhausted.
Yeah.
And then when I learned about the whole carb up,
Oh
down,
yeah, we
crash
had that
thing,
conversation.
right?
Yep.
And then I started, and I was like, I can't do that. So then I've learned how to eat without carbs, which is just massive for me, right? Because I'm 100% carbs 100% of the time. And then I've kind of come off that roller coaster, and now I've got to the point where I'm like, the amount of brain space that has been released for me that was just on a constant whir, thinking about, I don't like the way I look, I don't like the way I feel, I'm totally exhausted, I don't have the energy for that, give me another little sugar hit, I'll get through this. Like, I was totally at capacity. And I think this happens with so many things where you have to put a bit of consistency in. Eventually you get to, but it's like your skin as well, right? But skin's not my thing, it's always been weight that was my thing, right? Weight's the thing that's always taken up most of my brain space. But if, like, you don't like your skin, like we were saying it earlier, like, when you do feel more comfortable in your skin, then when you're having a conversation with somebody, you're not like, oh my god, don't look too closely, oh my god, just, you know, I want to put loads of makeup on, oh my god. Like, when you have something that feels like, you know, it's not right, the amount of mental capacity that takes up is enormous.
It's very true. I literally had that just recently because I was like, oh, you got a big event, and then on the run up to it, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, and then you leave it for me. I've realised that I struggle with consistency.
Me too.
And I procrastinate beyond normal. I procrastinate so much, and then I panic do everything.
Yeah, I think everybody does it. The reason you procrastinate is because you think it's going to be too hard, or it's not going to work,
the effort,
or it's not going to be worth it. Yeah.
But I'll do it before I need to get it done. Whereas if it's like little but consistently, then you're like, you can get to your goal without a big struggle and then feel good at the event. And that event there made me realise, I was just like, man, see if I just did this and this.
God, but how much do we know
I'd
that?
have felt better
totally
in my outfit and my skin. Oh my lord. I love getting my hair and makeup done. I love especially getting my hair done because I cannot do anything.
You don't like doing it. Yeah.
I just can't do anything. It's like this all the time. But there's certain things that don't work on my skin because I hadn't been looking after my skin. And when I got my makeup done, I was like, oh, there it is. Had you just taken care of your skin up until the event, you would. And I did that thing where I was like, I don't want to look anybody to look closely.
Yeah. But and then that takes up so much of your brain space, right?
Too much. Whereas if I had just done 21 days to go before, as in just applied all the stuff that we've already got, I wouldn't have felt that way. So that's really interesting. That must be a lot of people.
Like, but everybody's going to have a different thing, right?
Yeah.
Whatever your thing is. And listen, I don't think it necessarily has anything to do with what you look like. It's nothing to do with what your weight actually is or what your skin actually looks like or whatever. It's whatever your mental noise is.
Totally. That's very true.
Right?
That's very true.
Because it doesn't do anything for me. Well, yes, cutting out the carbs made me realise I was on an absolute roller coaster of exhaustion. Like bone exhaustion. I would get to, like, I would literally eat my lunch. I've always skipped breakfast, right, because I just don't like it, and that works for me fine, right? So then I would eat lunch, and it'd be the first thing I would eat in the day, and literally sometimes I would be sitting at the table, and then I would be like, I need to go to sleep right now, and I would walk to the couch, and I would be out, I would fall asleep every single day.
Because remember, we were laughing about, like, give me potatoes to go to sleep. Like, one of my friends actually says that. She's like,
well, yeah, it totally works. Yeah.
Give me potatoes and I'll just go to bed.
I'd wake up and I'd be like a bear, you know, just having come out of hibernation. I would shove a load of chocolate in my mouth before I would go and pick up the wee one for school, and I'd be like, I would be on this total roller coaster all the time.
That's what happened to me before I had my total skin breakdown. Do you remember that? That's exactly what I had. Whereas I kept saying to Stuart, I cannot get enough salt or sugar. And I didn't know which one it was that I needed. And I would shove. See, when I used to come to Blantyre, and I used to drive back, see the Morrison, is it Morrison's on the way home? Then I just had this conversation with Stuart, and I was like, see, when I drove home, I would duck in there.
100%.
And I would get, I would get like ready salted, the saltiest crisps that I could find, and a chocolate bar, and I would eat both at the same time. I kid you not. It's
No,
so
but
embarrassing
that's-
to admit,
no.
but that is what I used to do, and I had this for a long period of time. Then I had a massive breakdown
Yeah.
where I couldn't even wear deodorant because my
Yes,
skin
your
was
skin
so
is
bad.
just, yes.
I would shake,
Yes.
and I would what I would call constantly have a whitey.
Uh-huh.
I just felt nauseous.
Yes.
And I felt like sugar or salt was going to stop that.
And so then you would just shove it in your mouth. And it does temporarily take that away, and then you find yourself in it again. Oh, there was, you know, the really hot guy on Instagram who talks about...
Oh, I love, I know exactly what you're talking about.
So he talked, he did a reel where he was talking about the dopamine, your set level of like the pleasure pain thing.
Yep.
And what he was saying is, you have a set level, right? So if you're constantly pushing yourself up and having dopamine hits of social media scrolling or sugar or whatever.
Totally, yeah.
What he said was, no, however high up you go, you then, your brain will take you down to pain, right? So if you have pleasure from that kind of hit, your brain will counteract that, give you the same amount of pain just to even it out.
Oh.
And so then when you hit that level of pain, you go looking for it again. You go looking for more, you go looking for more. But what he was saying was, the opposite is also true. If you have your set level and you do something hard, you do a workout, you do a cold plunge, you do...
Yeah, this is what
therapy,
Stuart is always
right?
telling me, yeah.
You get the kick of the pleasure.
So you're needing to knock it on its head almost. That's what I obviously wasn't doing. I was feeding the monster.
I used to have this thing, you know this, where I would be like, I hear everybody saying, everything will even itself out. So if you get good things, you will get evened out with bad stuff, right? So I would be like, I don't want my life to be too good, because then bad things are going to happen.
It's like, don't laugh too much or you'll cry. It's
Yeah. So I would be like, well, I don't really want to freaking win the lottery, because then what's coming for me, right? But what I understand it now is, yeah, if you get that, if you take that false pleasure of that dopamine high, of that sugar, of that whatever, right, here's I'll finish my thought, then you get the kickback of that. But if you do the work, whatever that work is, your weight training, or you're, going out for fresh air, or something where you're like, I don't want to do that, then you get the positive of it, right? I think it's about emptiness. I remember once, I'm really scared of the dentist, right? And I had to get a tooth out, and my dentist was like, I'm not doing it. I'm sending you to this person who's going to knock you out. And I was like, right, fine. Because he had to do root canal treatment.
Oh, God.
And he had to take out a tooth. So then when I had to have another tooth taken out, it was like,
I
remember what you were like, I'm not doing that.
I think my mum's dentist is the same with her. He's like...
Now, I remember going under that anaesthetic, right? So you lie in the chair, the guy says, right, okay, just about to go. You don't, and then you wake up, right? Now, I remember being like, that can't be free.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Because he did monstrous things to me, right? And I didn't feel any of it.
Oh, I've got you,
right?
So now it's going to catch up with me somewhere.
Pay for that somehow. Like, that can't be free. You know, in the film, with the guy with the eyes and the thing and the pill, Limitless, right? Where it's like, well, it's not free. It's going to get
takes from
right?
your life somewhere else down the line.
So I remember after going under for that anaesthetic,
you're like, I'm going to get grey hair.
No, I had the weirdest dreams for ages.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, you've got to pay.
Yeah.
Right? So, and all of life just now is just this hit of like dopamine.
It is something that everybody's talking about right now because of the way that social media has went and the internet and
we're just
the information that we're getting, and
sugar is in everything, and we're doom scrolling and blah blah blah, and it's like chronic illness is so bad now. Like, why is it like our health should be amazing, we know all these things, and then it's like, oh, depression is so prevalent.
Mm-hmm.
And what he was saying was like, well, if you keep getting these false hits.
Yep.
Now, she says, with a black coffee, right, I'm buying energy, I'm going to crash. But I know that, right? And I'm going into it and I'm aware of it, and that's fine.
Because you know what the outcome of that is technically,
that,
right? So whereas if you went under an anaesthetic, you don't know what the outcome's going to be. So it's an unknown, therefore you're like, I'm going to now fear that in a way. Because you know what that one is. So you're like, I'm going to take that one.
But I think we've all got our limits. We've all got our things that we know.
Mm-hmm.
Like and we're like, right, well, that's worth it. So see if I had to go under anaesthetic again, I'd be like, hell yeah, go under anaesthetic. I'm not going to go under anaesthetic, right? But I don't drink alcohol anymore because I'm like, the balance doesn't work for me anymore.
Yeah, you're like the aftermath is not worth it.
It's not worth it.
Well, I have loads of people saying that now.
Oh,
like
totally.
They're just like, the aftermath, I cannot deal with a hangover, and because I had that cyclical needing sugar and needing salt and feeling really, really sick. Like my statement that everybody probably knows me by still, even at times, is, oh, I've got a whitey. I just need to go out for fresh air.
Yeah.
And I just felt like
she's gonna say it. I don't know what she's gonna say, but she's gonna say it.
I forgot. I was like, oh, this is a big one. What's this going to be? Case in point.
Yes. So there's
this
woman on Instagram called the Glucose Goddess, right? And you have to.
Oh,
voice
is
just delicious.
Yeah.
Range. I love. I'm not going to do it because I'm glad you do not.
It's glorious.
But when
I know
she
exactly.
says glucose, I'm like, I am listening, right? So she talks about how the reason she did it was her mental health got so bad, and she realised it correlated when she was having glucose spikes. So whenever she was having these sugar highs, she was like plunging into pits of depression.
It makes sense,
right? And everything is loaded. I think a lot of people don't understand now, particularly the generation above us.
Yeah.
It's like, what is the big deal with sugar? And it's like, there isn't a big deal with sugar. But you've got to know what it is and what it's doing. And the fact that it's in everything. So for me, when I cut that out, it was brutal and it's hard, and I was like, I don't know what the fuck I'm going to eat except cheese. But now I can see it's hard work, but
the other stuff's harder.
I was just going forever being like, trying to carry around my own misery.
It's when you get perspective on things, and I've done it for so many years, but if you go for this time this year, this event, I was just like, do you know what, see if I had just applied a little bit of effort, then it wouldn't have been so horrific. Such as life. So it's the little things.
I've been through that a lot recently, where I'm like, right, okay, I've gone some way towards being the more organised person, right? Or the person who, I always say this thing where I'm like, I'm the ragamuffin, right, who turns up and everybody else has got their nails done, their eyelashes done, their tan done, and their thing done, and I'm always like, blue arseFly rushing in, you know. And I'm getting closer to it, and I am just realising, do you know what, when you put that effort in, now, this is me talking about something very shallow, right? But the truth remains, when you put the effort in that foundation, you get the payoff. I used to just be like, but what's it for? Like, it's just vanity, or it's just whatever. But like, ultimately, before, when I would go to things, I'd be like, oh, don't look at my nails, or don't look at my whatever, or don't look at my, or I've just run about and I've not managed to get this. Or
because then you project that energy, but because that's the thing as well. Like, it'd be like, it's okay, we're going to turn up and we're going to bring our A game. And 9 times out of 10, it's because, see, regardless, we felt good. Right? So we were like, okay, we've maybe not got this, we've maybe not got that. And I think for me, that was a youth thing. So I would just be like, it's okay, we're going to do it. And now as I'm getting older, I'm realising, you know, and I actually find myself saying this to my sister the other day, I was like, I have noticed a difference in how I react to things. Especially not eating well, especially not doing my skincare. Somebody said something really nice, not sleeping. Somebody said something really nice about my neck. Fabulous, right? But I remember for a long time people used to always compliment my hair. And I've noticed recently, because I've not looked after my hair at all, like it's like this, that didn't matter. I could do that every day for years and years and years, and I could take my hair down and it was glossy and it was smooth and be like, you've got lovely hair. No, I take out my clip and it stays because it's so badly, because I'm not doing
trained it up the way. I get that. Like when I wear my hair in a bun all the time, I
it's
take
like
it on, it's
straw,
still going up the way.
so it's just gone together. And then I was just like, oh my god, I don't get away with that anymore. Taken for granted. And that's what I said to my sister. I was like, no matter what people say, I used to hear things from people who were older than me, and I'd be like, it's not that. I'm here and I'm listening, and I'm like, oh.
Well, we were talking about that earlier, like, oh, my ankle, I fell and I went over on my ankle, and I'm like, that was 2 months ago, and I'm like, oh, well, yeah, it's going to take time for that to heal now, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, it's just that reality kicking in of like,
if you don't eat well and you don't look after, and it's the age old thing, you would die for your children, but would you live for them? And I think that for me now is the kind of thing of, you need to eat better, Amna, because you don't have the energy for your children, and it isn't their fault that you're shoving chocolate down your throat to get that hit, just to get through your work. But then you've nothing left when you come home for your work for the children and the people that matter most to your life, because you're on a come down. And get some sleep so that you're not raging in the morning when you're trying to get out the door and you're rushing them out the door. And that's the whole thing. I think actually my sister had sent me a video saying that.
I think I saw it in her stories actually. So 2 things. One is that I know there's a book called like the Hurried Woman or something like that, and it basically talks about how we were raised to be like, just always be moving, like just always be going, go all the time, like running on empty, blah blah blah, and how actually like that is just toxic in the way that like smoking used to be fine, and now we're like, it kind of, can we just maybe
realise that that's not the case?
It's not the goal, right? Drinking all day while you work for Mad Men, maybe we don't do that anymore. And actually this idea of like, oh, you have to be absolutely burst. And the other thing is, I saw a reel the other day, and it's about what it's like to be around an emotionally reactive person. You know, somebody
that came up on mine.
Oh my gosh, somebody where you're in the room with them and something happens and they go up like a rocket. And as I was watching it, I was like,
oh, that might be me.
And so,
did I not just send you a voice message saying that literally is me?
Maybe we talked about this,
and that's why it came up on the the eye.
So in so many people's company, I'm not like that anymore, right? Like I appreciate that I used to be like that all the time, because I was totally working on it. And in most people's, like, I think there's lots of people I know where they would be like, I don't see you as that. But in some people's company, I am still going up like a rocket. And it was so interesting because they were saying, oh, people who can't manage their own emotions, you know, you have to watch what you say around them, where they're triggered and they're this and they're that. And I was like, I have that awareness that in some circumstances I am still that emotionally reactive person. And I really don't want that. You know, everybody chooses a word of the year. Mine's is very different to usual. This is a word I would never. Mine's is usually like growth or expansion or adventure. This year it's peace. That is so not me. Is that yours as well?
I it wasn't the word peace. I just knew the feeling that I'm going for. And I was talking about this with a friend. And I was just like, I'm just not doing it anymore.
No.
See, if I come away and it doesn't make me feel good, that doesn't happen anymore. I think the repetitiveness of everything as you get older makes you go, why did I do that for so long?
Yeah.
And I had just spoke with a friend about this, and I was like, if I come away and I don't feel anything but peaceful or good or progression, positive, let's just put it under the positive. I was like, I just don't go there anymore.
And it's hard to do, but it's
it's a habit you need to build.
It's like coming off that sugar roller coaster, right?
You
have to come off it to be like, what the hell was I putting myself through?
And it's sort of quite a brave thing to do, because then you think,
very,
yeah, because then there's times and situations and places and people that you're just like, I just don't go there. I just don't go there anymore. And it's like, I'm not going to mirror.
Oh, it's so hard. It is.
Because obviously you want to mirror positivity, right?
Yeah.
But what I realised was, did we not have, for goodness sake, did we not have a big massive conversation about this like we do everything else, right? But it was like, it was a big conversation about mirroring, and when that's a good thing, it's a good thing. But there was not an understanding of self. There was never that understanding of, but this is me. I was always just like, I'll just be who that person wants me to be for the now. And then I'd go home and I'd be like, I'm maybe full of loathing or
oh my
shame.
god, I hate it. Yeah.
And then I knew people would be like, she's not usually, not that she's not usually like that, because I don't think people give you a thought when you're out there front
speaker.
Out there speaker. But that is what, so it's not really a word for me, but peace would probably think it would be just see if it's not serving me. It's not good if it's not served me last year, if it's not served me in 15 years, it's not going to serve me now, and be brave enough to leave it, detach. And that includes self-sabotage.
Yep. It's so funny. So I was like, right, my word of the year's peace. And then literally on the 2nd of January, I was like, oh, is it really?
Well, because obviously you're going to be tested straight away because you're
immediately. Right? So it was like, right, acknowledge that your word is peace, and the universe isn't just going to be like, well, here's the gift of peace. Instead, it was like, well, do you know what I'm going to do then? I'm going to show you all your triggers so that you can then work on
Find
them.
your peace in them.
Right. So there's a really fascinating thing. Now, who wrote this book and what is the book? There's a horse in my head.
I used to be the one to help you out on that. Michael Marpungle.
No. Michael somebody, and it's something about something. I don't know.
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about, but I'll never know the name of it. And it's beautiful quotes, and is it all this lovely? It's like nothing's drawn like that, nothing at all. But is it ink drawn?
I can't remember.
I think I know what you mean.
It. He's written 2 books. Anyway, he talks about
the horse, the man, and
no.
And
right. Actually, I still haven't read or seen anything about that. But
I just see it on social media.
Yeah. I've not seen it. So, and he wrote the thing about the surrender experiment, and then the other one, right? Anyway, so he wrote this book, and he talks about thorns.
Oh,
right?
You told me.
Yes, right. So, basically, an emotionally reactive person is essentially somebody who has loads of thorns, right? Because. So what he talks about, I'm going to put this coffee down, but I need to remember it's
drank all mine.
But I can't drink all that this time of night. So he talks about thorns, right? So he's like, when you have a thorn, imagine you've got a thorn in your arm. You've got 2 choices. You can either spend your life going, don't touch my thorn. Oh, I've got a thorn. And you build something over it, you build this thing, and you're like, everybody stay away from my thorn. Because if somebody... if somebody was to press on a thorn, it's going to hurt more than anything pressing on you ever should. If somebody gently bumps into you, it's going to be the most horrific pain, right? So you've got two options. You can either protect your thorn, keep everybody away, or you can remove your thorn. So the thorn isn't your fault, but it's your responsibility to remove, right? So an emotionally reactive person is one who has loads of thorns, right? Because it's not what the other person's doing as much as the other person can be a pain in the arse. Another person can be in their company and just ignore them. Just be like, whatever, right? But if you've got a thorn, that particular thorn that they are brushing up against, you're going to go up like a rocket, right? So on the 2nd of January, I discovered I'm fucking covered in thorns still. Like, I've worked on so many of them, right?
Oh, you always think you've done so much work, and then you're presented with
you have done so much work, and that's
thorny,
really
pushy person.
Because there's like exactly there's 1,000 people I could be in the company of, and I'm not going to be triggered at all. And then there's some people I'm in the company of, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm immediately there, right? So what was really interesting was I asked for peace, and within 2 days it was like, okay, oh my god, here are all the thorns. But what I find really interesting is, you've got two choices. You can either say, I'm not going to be around the people who make me feel that way. Option number one. Important. See, if somebody is treating you like crap, stay away, right? However...
Yeah, because we're not talking about...
No, we're not.
We're not talking about, like
gas.
You sort yourself out, because there are some people that are just toxic.
Yes, and if you can remove
But-
them, just remove them. Like, you're too good to be around just arseholes who treat you like crap. But if you find yourself like disproportionately
Important.
yes,
Yeah.
like, so I was a bit hangry the other day and got into a little fighteroo.
That's so funny.
And I could see that my reaction to the thing that had happened was disproportionate to the situation. I could see it was pressing on something old. Right? It wasn't the moment, the situation wasn't that bad. He just burned my lunch, it's not a big deal. Anyway, I went up like a rocket. So then I was like, there is something here that I need to remove.
Yeah.
Because here's what happens. Thorns, you only become aware of thorns when somebody presses on them or bumps into them. But believe me, they're always under there. And they're always causing you discomfort. But when it's low level, chronic discomfort, you're not aware of it.
It's so interesting as well how being aware of them is a level you need to get to first. When you're just when somebody's like, well, how can I'm never hugged. Nobody ever hugs me. And they're like, because you're like a thorny porcupine.
Yes.
So how am I supposed to hug you when you're constantly like full of spikes? But when you're in the full of spikes, when you're just like, no, I'm not, you know. And it's really good because once you start, isn't it? Then you can start to recognise, oh, that's a trigger. That's a trigger, or that's setting me off. And then why? But honestly, for a long time, I was like, just a thorny bush.
Me too. Yeah.
But
And
nobody could
actually,
hug.
clenched all the time.
Just
Just constantly like,
yeah.
all my muscles clenched. Like braced. Braced for impact.
All the time. And then once you get by that level, it's not, I'm going to say it is easier. It's not. It is a little, because then you can start to recognise it and, speak about it. And
actually, once you start doing that difficult stuff of working through stuff, you get that payoff.
Yeah.
And truthfully,
Balance.
yes, you can be a non-emotionally reactive person, or you can at least limit the number of situations or people that you're emotionally reactive around.
Exactly. And it's like, loads of people always go, you could just tell by your face. And I'm like, oh, it just gives myself away. But actually, now, it's like, my face is the least. Before it would be like, now it's just like, well, at least it's just my face, I'll work on that. Whereas before it was just, honestly, I just imagine like a hedgehog with all the spikes up and going, why is nobody hugging me? Why is nobody hugging me? And they're like, how can I hug a hedgehog with all the thorns out?
And it's also hard. It's hard to be
vulnerable,
painful all the time and triggered all the time and knackered all the time
and vulnerability as well. It was like seen as such a weakness rather than, because I was watching something and it was talking about sensitivity, and it's like, you know, people say it as a weakness. Oh, you're so sensitive, or your children are so sensitive, and it's like, well, if you turn it on its head, it's like that sensitivity is a really good nurse that's going to look after you, or a nursery nurse that's going to look after your children. And don't see it as a weakness. Just be like, well, I'm going to use it as a good thing, and that's with everything.
I've always been fascinated with archetypes, right? One thing I see is like, there is no such thing as good and there's no such thing as bad. If you see every part of your personality like a coin, it has a heads and it has a tails, right? So, because you could be like, oh, I'm a very caring person, but you know what it's like if you're around a person who just only thinks about other people, is always doing things for other people, they can be so bitter and so like take no care of themselves and like just be, oh, I'm always giving, I'm always whatever, right? There's the good and the bad. There's like there's the positive, and I don't want to say negative, but there's the shadow and light of everything. Like, and we were talking about this the other day, but it was like, right, these things that I find as my biggest issues, they always contain your biggest strengths, right? So you'll be like, oh, I can't choose. I can't choose between this or that. I'm like, I like everything. I'm
hated that about myself.
Yes, exactly. But from me, from the outside, because I see you differently than you see yourself, I'm like, you can do all these things, right? You can lend yourself to 10 different, like if we were talking about do things in different styles, you're like, I can do that, I can do that, I can do that, I can do that. You're not. Right, but you will be looking at yourself and be like, oh, well, I'm scatty.
It makes me so frustrated.
Yes.
And I feel like, no, I can't get anywhere and I can't do anything. I feel like I lack purpose.
But that's perfect.
Because you're like, but that's great, just do it. And I'm like, oh,
no, but
yeah, totally.
You are not single-minded.
So it's turning.
You're multi-minded. But when you are judging yourself,
yes,
you're not going to see it, to put it, right? So for me, I cannot hold things in my head. I cannot, you know, put the washing on and I'll forget that and put the washing on or whatever. And so then I'll be like, I cannot deal with anything unless it's in front of me, right? And I can also see that when I allow myself to not judge myself, I am constantly reprioritizing.
Yeah.
And so whatever is important in that moment, I'm going to do that thing. And some other people are not like that. They're like, no, I mean, Richard is like that, for example. He's like, no, this is the thing that I'm doing. And sometimes I would be really triggered by him because I would be like, why are you still doing that thing when this thing is clearly more important? Like this thing that's just come up that we weren't expecting, I can go to that immediately. You're exactly the same. I'm constantly reprioritizing. But that means that sometimes the washing that I've started never makes it to the top of the pile.
And then sometimes I'll turn around and I'll be like, no, just give me a list. And I'm third down. Don't make me don't make me move something up to number 2. Just let me get to 4. So then that's again the two sides of it. Where I'm like, oh, I want to be one or the other. But being able to constantly change. Yeah.
You just need to.
It's
when we look at ourselves without judgment.
That's it. I think that's exactly it.
Which is hard to do, right? It's hard to do when we have so much fucking self-hatred, which we all are kind of in over time put to. And I think, thank God, we're now working towards a time where we actually are not doing that anymore.
And we're allowing ourselves time for a clear out. Because you know, Stuart was talking to my eldest about integrity, and he was just like, see, at the very, very end of the day, regardless of what happens or the decisions you make or whatever, he's like, you go home to your own mind. So you go home and you shut your door and you put your phone off and you turn the telly off and you go to your bed, and whatever is in your mind is, you know, the narrator or whoever is in your head. If you have done something with integrity, you can go to bed and sleep. And he was trying to explain it, and he's very good at explaining things, whereas I'm like, just don't do that, okay? Just be nice. And he explained it in this way to her, and she was like, that made sense. And I was like, oh my god, I would try to explain this to her since she was 2 years old. And that in itself is something that we are now finding the time to work on. Whereas I felt like there was just so much busyness, expectation, you know, that we're all being held to. It's like, well, we've not got time for that. And now I feel like there's time to do that. Because once you solve that, I feel like so much other things will be better. And the self-loathing should technically ease.
And I think that what's allowing that to be possible for me is I feel like we're all taking away the shoulds in terms of how to live your life, or how to be successful, or how to whatever, or you should do this, or you should,
or like, here's a standard.
Yeah. And so then I always felt like, well, I can't really be integrity with what I want to do, because then I'm never going to be successful. I'm never going to do anything, because I don't want to do any of those things that somebody's suggesting. So then you warp yourself and you try and be liked by people, and so there was this really interesting thing the other day that I saw, and it was saying that guilt is an emotion that you feel when you're out of alignment with yourself, right? So when you say or do something that you know isn't who you are, you'll feel guilt about it, right? So, but we're taught to believe that guilt is the same as feeling someone else's emotions for them, right? So for example, so if you do something that's out of alignment for you, you're going to feel guilty about it. So if you're walking down the street and you see a kitten and you kick it, that's not in alignment for you. That's not who you are, so you're going to feel guilty about that, right? But if you, instead we feel guilt when we get our kids watched, but having our children watched isn't out of alignment for us, so we shouldn't feel guilt in that moment. You shouldn't feel guilt unless you're out of alignment. And so the guilt is you're feeling someone else's feelings for them. So you're thinking, you're telling yourself the story that this person's fed up, I'm asking too much of somebody,
asking too much,
right? Now if you had your children watched by somebody who you knew was not a good person, and you felt guilt about that, that's real guilt. But if you have them watched by someone who's loving and caring and wants to be with them, and you feel guilt, you're just,
it's programmed.
You're trying to feel somebody's feelings for them, right? You're trying to mitigate other people's emotions, and actually that's where things go wrong, when we try and feel
that's what's exhausting.
Yes, and that's like you were saying about do things with integrity. So actually just be in alignment. And people say things about alignment.
Stuart said it in a very better way, and when he said it, I was like, I totally get it. Like, I totally agree with that, and I just couldn't. I was like, I couldn't have put that into words the way that it, you know, he put it across, and it was just like, if everybody was taught from that place, it would be. It wouldn't be.
But do you know?
Okay.
Yeah.
Hedgehog.
But here's the hardest thing, I think, that we're taught to go to work 9 to 5. We're taught to go and get a degree and do the thing, and actually for some of us that's not in alignment. And so it's not going to feel good, and therefore you're going to chronically feel like crap. You're not going to know why, And then you're going to build on that crap feeling. You're never going to know what it feels like to feel good because you're never doing the thing that you know is right for you. And here's the thing that takes us back to the sugar spiral.
Mm-hmm.
How do you know when you are tired because you're tired, and how do you know when you're tired because you're having a sugar crash? And it's so hard because we have so much stuff that I feel just poisons our water, you know, that we never know what it is to just feel healthy and happy and calm and, you know,
this kind of sense of security and settlement. You know, I always think to myself, man, I wonder what it's like to be somebody that when they're just sitting, there's
just peace and
they can daydream. I've always wondered what it's like for somebody to be able to daydream, because I know myself that if I'm staring off into the distance,
I'm having
tabs are going. It's like,
I'm
you need to
thinking
do
about
this, you
that
need to do
thing that
this,
I
you need to
said
do
that
this, you need to do
time.
this. And
Yeah,
I'm just
totally.
like, and then nothing productive comes out of it.
It's no wonder that people don't really settle into themselves until they're in their 50s.
I
60s.
totally understand that now. I
That's
totally
what I think.
understand that
And it
now.
was Helen Mirren, and she was talking, and she was like, yeah, just don't, you know, I can't remember what it was she was saying, but she was like, don't worry about what people think or whatever. And I'm like, that's all well and good. But what do you know is right and what do you know isn't? And I feel like I'm only getting to the age now where I can be like, I know what's right and what's not. Not 100% of the time. And see what I was saying earlier about, oh, it's easier for me to eat right and just like look after myself better than it is to deal with all the That's not true 100% of the time.
Of course.
And
of course,
all
yeah.
it will take is for me to have a couple
A
of
busy
rough
day.
nights' sleep,
Yep.
or to go to a birthday party and somebody will be like, here, have a bit of cake, here, have a bit of pizza, here, for me to go back on that roller coaster again. There is no part of me that's denying that.
And that's normal in a way. Yep.
But at least I have that, I'm going to bring myself back.
It's about having a good foundation, isn't it?
And to have tools to know how to right myself again, even if that tool is sleep, or it's certain foods, or it is whatever.
And I think also nowadays the access to these tools is far easier.
Thank goodness. Oh, I mean, the education now about ourselves and our bodies and our minds and how they work is amazing.
And I think we might have touched on this last time.
Who knows?
You can tell us.
This could be exactly the same as the last one, Robert.
And what was it? Oh, Yasmin asked me today, like, what's a DVD? And I just went, get out. She got up the stairs, Yasmin, she was just like, genuinely no clue. And I went, well, and I started explaining, I was like, see, it's like a circle. Like,
no.
Can't. But it was like, they were asking me about homework. And my eldest is very kind of rule-based, right? So it's like, I wouldn't do that because that's not the right thing to do. So she would always go, so she would do homework, and she finds it easier to work if I read out the question.
Right.
But if she reads the question, she's like, no, I can't do this.
Yes.
But if you read it out, she gets it. She writes the answer, and we're like, oh my God, it changed everything.
Yeah.
Primary 7, this is homework now, just
long.
changing. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I said, well, Mum's just going to Google. It was some mad stuff about division. I was like, I never get taught that way, right? So I was just like, to confirm your answer is right, I'm just going to, she went, no, don't do that. This, I'll find out when I've marked. The teacher will tell me whether it's right or wrong. Then I know the way I've done it's wrong or the way I've done it's right. And I'm like, and she went, what did you do? And I went, oh, we had to go to the library and get books.
We just made stuff up.
I was like, see, if I wanted to know about a topic, I had to go and get a book and take my information from that book. And she was just...
And even then, there would probably only be this much.
100%.
In a wee encyclopedia somewhere.
And sometimes it was like...
It was liberating.
And in other ways, it was, I had to explain to her, well, that was somebody's view on it.
Exactly.
So if that book was the only book I had access to, then my view would be on
Whatever
umbrellas,
they're
would be
seeing.
what they're viewing. And she was just like, this is absolutely
The
mental.
world was so much smaller.
So now it's like understanding hormones,
Yeah.
understanding how reflexology can affect your digestive system,
Yeah.
and how working on your neck can affect your muscles on your face. All of that is, and I say this to my children, I'm like, you have no idea how amazing this is now. We have access to all, and then the flip side of that is that it can completely overwhelm you and exhaust you, but finding a balance is kind of what we're trying to do now. So that's always a good thing as well. And what you do with the information is, and I've realised as well that I love sound bites. Like I like short and sharp information. I feel like it stays.
We don't communicate
We don't
that way.
communicate that way. But that's what's hilarious. I don't communicate. It takes me about a year to get to my point, or I forget my point.
Yeah.
It just took me so long to get to that bit, and I'm like, I have no idea
So
what
if
I'm
somebody
talking
says
about.
to me, do you want to meet for half an hour? I'm like, what's the point in that?
That's disgraceful. Anybody that asks you to meet for half an hour, bin them right away.
No, I can't.
No. I always say to people as well, I'm like, I've come across better if you just give me a coffee date.
Yeah.
Just meet with me and then
Yeah.
I'll come across. And if somebody tries to catch me for 5 minutes, I hate that. Because I'm like, I'm never going to get across anything in 5 minutes. Why don't we meet up and have a chat?
Yeah.
And it's always the way. But yeah, I take information in short, sharp bites. Especially informative stuff or facts or whatever. But yeah, basically this warbling thing is how much access we have to information that we didn't. And I always explain this to girls. I'm like, you can understand yourself now more than you ever could before.
Crazy.
Wild.
And it's constantly changing. But now I need to pee. So
I
I'm
kind
gonna
of
stop
need to
this.
pee as well.
See, this is how we make decisions. Did you think that we planned this? And that we decided we were going to talk for 52 minutes? No. We need
Has
to pee.
that been fit? That has been 52 minutes.
I know. My coffee has both kicked in and
Kicked in and come out.
oh, it's just a bit. Oh, what were we watching? We were watching a film or something the other day, and it was like, I need to release fluids from my body. So that's what we say in the house now. Instead of I need to pee, I need to release fluids from my body. So I'm going to release fluids from my body. Bye, everyone.